Hi, I'm Ekene Anu. And one of the most traumatic experiences that a woman can go through is a divorce or some other choice that needs to be made that looks like failure, some other transition. And the reason why I say choice that needs to be made is because majority of the divorces are actually initiated by women. However, most women feel a tremendous amount of shame. They feel very challenged, and in fact, many don't recover. Today, I'd like to give you some tips to help you reclaim your womanhood after a divorce or some other transition that looks like failure to other people. The first thing I want to tell you is that you have to remember your why. Even when you file, it's going to be difficult. You're going to go through the grieving process. There's going to be so many changes that you go through, and sometimes you might find yourself asking if you made the right decision. That's normal. It doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision. It means you have to be really clear on your why, and quite frankly, you should be really clear on your why before you make any such decision. You shouldn't be making a decision like this to punish anyone. The decision like this should be made to either save yourself, save your children, or even save your partner because the relationship is perhaps toxic. So number one, remember your why. That will help you as you go through. When it gets difficult, you remember this is why, this is what is at stake. The second thing that I think is really important as you go through the process of reclaiming yourself is to not take on other people's opinions as your own. Everyone is going to have an opinion because opinions are cheap. You know what they say about opinions. I'm not going to say it, but you know what they say about opinions. Everyone has one. Just because people have an opinion doesn't mean it has anything to do with you. Some people will say, why did you leave? Some people will say, why did you stay? Some people will say, why did you wait so long? It is about them. It's not about you. Your choices are your choices. Remember that. And you have the right to make a choice that makes sense to you. If you chose to stay and try to work something out and then you eventually had to leave, that is a choice that you had the right to make. If you chose to walk away because you really could not survive in it, that's a choice that only you could have made. None of us know what you're going through, only you do. So it's important not to take other people's opinions personally or take them on as yours. The third thing that I think is really important to think about is the difference between blame and accountability. When something like this happens, a lot of us go right into blame. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? And I think blame is not so helpful. Blame is about pointing fingers. It is about making someone else wrong. Accountability is more useful. Here are some things that could have been done differently. And when you look into a relationship, no matter who did what, both parties are accountable. And it's important for you to take a look at yourself and ask what you need to do differently, what you need to hold yourself accountable to. Even while you recognize that your partner may have brought something to the table, you can't move forward in reclaiming yourself until you do your own work. Accountability says, I have the ability to be a different person. Blame comes from a place of condemnation, and condemnation is never good. In fact, the more you blame yourself, the more broken, the more beat down, the more disempowered you feel. But when you take accountability, when you take ownership, you actually give yourself strength. You have the ability to look at the situation and say, here's what I'm not going to do again. And even if the other person did everything wrong, you really have to take a good look at yourself so that you say, I won't make that choice again. Because if you don't do that work, you will enter into the same relationship with someone else in different clothing. You will keep repeating the same patterns until you understand what you brought to the table. So that accountability is so critical. It's so important that we release ourselves from shame. Even if you're the one that did something wrong, it's important to let go of the shame. Shame is such a broken emotion. It takes us to a spiral where we just feel like we're wrong. Accountability says what I did was wrong. But I am, as a person, I'm not wrong. What I did was wrong. My behavior was wrong. I can change my behavior. Accountability comes from a place of conviction, of repentance. But shame, blame, all of that reproach breaks you down. So right now, if you're sitting in a place and you're feeling ashamed, I want you to take that coat off. Take that coat of shame off. Let it go, because that is not of God. Whatever you did yesterday, there are new mercies today. So you get to choose a different path and become a different person today. So, number 4, you have to give yourself room to grieve. Sometimes when I work with women, I find that they don't understand why they're grieving, because they can tell me all the reasons why that relationship needed to end, or that job needed to end, or any other transition. They can tell me all the reasons why. Listen, it can actually be something you know you needed to leave behind, something you don't want ever again in life, and you still will have to grieve it. Any sort of loss brings up that emotion, that feeling of grief, that process of grief. So give yourself room to grieve. Allow yourself to grieve. And grief is inexplicable. And grief is inexplicable. You know, we've talked about, you may have heard the stages of grief. Some people say there are 5. There's another 7 stages of grief. You may go from anger to denial to depression to bargaining to acceptance. And it doesn't mean it's linear. You may go from anger to acceptance today and circle right back to denial, because the process of grief is just what it is. Give yourself grace. Allow yourself to grieve, and make sure that the people around you are allowing you to grieve as well. Sometimes people don't let you grieve. You're feeling sad and they want to stop you from feeling sad. You're going to feel sad. If you ended a marriage, it's like a death. You lost something, even if it's something you don't want anymore. So you have to allow yourself to grieve and train the people around you to help you grieve. I'm grieving. Why are you sad? I'm grieving. Well, you know you needed to leave him anyway. That may very well be true. But at least I'm grieving the loss of my expectations. And that's valid. You can grieve a job. You can grieve anything. You have the right to grieve, and you really should allow yourself the room to grieve. Because when you don't grieve, you carry all of that stuff with you. So many of us suppress the pain. Some of us project the pain. We try to escape the pain. Let the pain do what it's here to do. Which takes me to the next thing. You have to ask yourself, what are the lessons that you've learned? In everything there are lessons. And so if you are not able to pick out lessons, guess what? You went through all of that for nothing. And like any course, if you don't pass the test, guess what happens? You take it again. So it's so critical to ask yourself, what are the lessons I have learned from this experience? Sometimes when we are trapped in anger and bitterness, we don't look at the lessons for us. We are so consumed with pointing fingers and saying, that person did wrong. But everything in life happens for us, even the painful things. And that's what I tell myself. So if I go through something, I have to say to myself, this thing is happening for me. And if it's happening for me, I need to receive. I need to mine. I may have to dig deep to find out what's here for me, but there is something here for me. So I want you to ask yourself, what are the lessons I can take from this situation? What is the transformation that I can take from this situation? This one sounds simple, but it's probably the most difficult thing to do. Forgive yourself and forgive others. Often we say we've forgiven, but we really haven't. Deep down, we haven't. In the midnight hour, you're self-flagellating. You're talking to yourself in a negative way. You're mad at yourself. Your inner mean girl comes up and says, maybe you just weren't good enough. Listen, it wasn't about you. It's two people coming together and not coming together for so many different reasons. And even if you think you weren't good enough, even if you think you did something wrong, remember, forgive yourself. And even more critical, or maybe just as critical, forgive the other party, even if they don't have enough sense to ask for forgiveness. You need to let them go. Don't hold them in a hostage position, trying to force an apology from them. I've seen that happen. You keep trying to force an apology. You keep trying to confront them. This is what you did. This is what you did. This is what you did. Some people are not ready for that. So you have to be able to let go and forgive. Now let's talk about healing. The next thing I think that is important for you to do as we talk about releasing that old self is beginning to create a new self and a new reality. You have to become intentional. You have to ask yourself, what do you want? I want you to understand that you didn't just lose something. You created space for a brand new opportunity. And so you can't just say, I lost all of that. Now start thinking about, what else could I gain? You have an opportunity to recreate your life the way you want it. Don't squander it. Ask, what do I want? What do I deeply desire? For many of the women I work with, it's the first time that they have had the autonomy to ask that question without anyone else inserting their desires and hopes on them. They are able to look and say, this is what I want. Get honest with yourself. What do you really want? Maybe you're an empty nester and you're so consumed with the life you thought you would have and the mansion and the parties, and now you're alone and it's just you. Well, what if deep down inside you've always wanted to travel? What if that's an opportunity for you right now? What if you don't want the big mansion? What if you want a nice penthouse suite with a doorman? Maybe I'm talking about me. Wait. Let's get back to you. You have every opportunity. You could go back to school. You could do anything. This is your opportunity. Don't waste it looking back at what you left behind. It is time to start looking forward at what you can have. You have to become intentional. Do that work. What do I want? What kind of life do I want to live? What kind of people do I want to surround myself with? The small things and the big things. You have to recognize that you still have power. And this is a fresh start. So many wonderful things come from fresh starts. The last thing I want to talk to you about is I want you to remember that you are still fully a woman. Now, I know that not everyone watching this is a feminine being, but I just want to talk to my sisters right now because so many women I meet feel so broken and rejected in their season of aloneness. In fact, so many women are so quick to want to get into another relationship because you want some man to validate you. Sister, girl, don't do that to yourself. The season of your aloneness is powerful. And it is most important that you learn how to self-validate, that you learn how to see yourself fully as a woman and own yourself fully as a woman before you start looking for someone else to take that space again. Remember that you are sensual, that you are beautiful, that you are lovely, that you are loved, that you are a gift. Remember that. Keep affirming that to yourself and get around people who affirm that to you. Make sure that you are living intentionally every day of your life as this glorious feminine being. When you don't feel like it, get dressed anyway. Put your hair together, put some lipstick on, put on some great music, put on something nice to wear, and live every day with intention. God bless you. We'll keep talking more, and you will reclaim yourself after divorce or any other transition. I'm Ekene, the Iconic Woman's Coach.